Hello everyone, and this is my review for WWE Monday Night Raw on November 21st, 2016. And well, of course this is the Fallout show from Survivor Series, and you see where everything would be going throughout the entire night. They started off the show with Goldberg. So Goldberg, after his dominating match from Survivor Series, beating Brock Lesnar, comes out there and basically starts making it feel like he was going to do some kind of farewell speech, and then he does a bit where he says he met up with Stephanie McMahon and is like, "You did," like Stephanie was like, tells a story saying that it's like, "Yeah, you did have the one more ass kicking left in you," and then they make a tease of saying, "But do you have one more title run left in you?" And this basically leads to him saying, of course he does, all blah, 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 all that typical stuff. And then announces himself for the Royal Rumble match. Not just like being at the Rumble, he announces himself for the match itself. So now we have something else to look forward into. And how are they going to play off of everything? And is this going to be another catalyst for him and Brock or something in that sense down the road? Overall, like, it's insane to think about, like, a long time ago that this guy had no promo type skills, but now, like, as he's had more time, it's like he feels comfortable behind the microphone, and it feels natural, it feels good to him, and he can actually cut a pretty good promo now itself. Like, I've been very thoroughly surprised by the promos that we have gotten from Goldberg since he's come back. So it'll be interesting to see how they play off of this and where they're going to be going into this with the Rumble and how many more times like he'll appear on the show before the Rumble itself. Up next, after that, was the New Day going up against Cesaro and Sheamus. This match was made after the tag team elimination match from the night before at Survivor Series, and of course was for the tag team titles. And this was a good match. And is it just me, or does it feel like the New Day is going back to full heel now? Like, for a little while they had gone completely babyface. Like, even though you had all three guys out there, they were kind of being babyfacious about it and not getting involved. But now Xavier Woods gets involved in, like, every single match. It feels like they're kind of going back to their heel ways. Because that's how they ended up having to win the match now. Because Xavier Woods, for like the last couple of them, has been getting involved or causing a disqualification or causing a distraction for the win. And now you're towing this line of, oh, are they baby faces or are they heels? And it feels like they've been more playing towards a heel role recently than playing that babyface role that they have been doing. And it'll be interesting to see where they go with this, because because something else later in the show showed that says that they have another tag match the next week. They started mentioning Demolition and everything in that sense in their record, and we'll see how everything plays off of that. But you almost get the feeling that New Day is going more towards a heel route than towards being those baby faces that they usually have been. After this one, you had Jericho in a backstage promo saying that he was going to have a highlight reel tonight. He was going to do an autopsy and who was to blame for the loss of Team Raw in the 5-on-5 men's match later in the night. And then, of course, and then right after this was an interesting segment, because they decided to play the whole aspect of somebody getting locked out of their locker room, but it ends up being Enzo. Enzo gets locked out of the locker room with no clothes on. And the reason why this is played interesting, because they did the whole aspect of it, of the whole blur down at the bottom where his junk would be, and it's like, wait a minute, this is a PG show, right? Okay, we'll go with this. He eventually runs into Lana, and of course he runs into Lana when this happens. This eventually leads to a match between Rusev and Enzo, where of course Rusev is going to be angry, even though he got locked out of the locker room by somebody else. It wasn't really on purpose that he ended up in front of Lana completely nude. to go along with it. It's like, of course Rusev's going to be angry. You have a guy completely nude talking the way that he would talk in front of Rusev's wife, and yeah, it was kind of expected to go where they were going to go with that. And that led to a match later on the night with Enzo and Rusev, and before introducing Rusev, Lana again messes up everything, and she tells America, "Please rise. You're in Toronto, and you did it over in Scotland. Get it right. Get it right." Nah. But it of course led to even bigger heat. And it's like, she's like, "Well, I screwed that up. Screw it, we'll just keep going." And then to go along with that. But otherwise, squash style match. Though with the way that they ended the segment with Big Cass getting involved, you kind of assume they're going to go a route of maybe Rusev versus Big Cass here down the road. I mean, we'll see where they go with everything to go along with that. On the Cruiserweight side this week, you had Cedric Alexander. This was earlier in the show. This was like right after that one segment with Enzo Amore, going up against Arya Daivari. Not a bad match from these guys. Like, you're not really getting much in the terms of other storylines going into the Cruiserweight side of everything. Also have like Brian Kendrick or something in that sense. But this was pretty much the matches that they did tonight were pretty much there to promote the 205 live show, which is not starting this week, but next week. So they're going to be doing 205 live starting next week. So you also had Cedric Alexander going up against Arya Daivari, which I thought was a pretty good match from put on by their end. But again, it's kind of one of those things like the crowd not fully getting behind it because they don't have another reason to get fully behind some of these guys. You have a decent story with how Brian Kendrick is and his character, and semi with TJ Perkins as well. But some of the other guys are falling a little bit short on this. They also had a triple threat match to find out who was going to go up against Brian Kendrick for the Cruiserweight title on the first 205 live show next week. The match was with TJ Perkins, Rich Swann, and Noam Dar. Rich Swann goes over. This kind of seemed natural with the way that they've been going with Rich Swann getting wins over Brian Kendrick recently. It kind of makes it feel natural that they were going to go that route. Not a bad match again, but again, it's just one of those things with the Cruiserweight side, like the Cruiserweight side that since they've been on Raw versus the Cruiserweight Classic, it just feels different. It doesn't feel like on Raw they don't feel different from the rest of the show. Where the Cruiserweight Classic, the way they were presented in terms of the stories and everything in that sense, it felt unique. It felt different. It felt... It just had a different feeling and vibe behind it. And maybe they recapture that with 205 Live. I don't know. But we'll see how everything goes. And you can imagine that they won't be really doing that show live too terribly long. Because if you think about it, going into 205 Live, they're going to be having a big main event going into it because SmackDown's being done before that. And then they go straight to 205 Live. You can imagine that they'll probably eventually start just pre-taping it and then airing it after SmackDown goes off the air. I mean, we'll see how they go with everything in that sense, but it'll be interesting to see how this plays off with the whole 205 Live thing and everything to go along with that. Let's see here. Other matches throughout the night. They had Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson going up against the Golden Truth. This was to determine number one contendership to the New Day and basically saying, oh, you guys face the New Day next week. In that sense, Gallows and Anderson go over in this match. Kind of expected there. You don't expect Golden Truth to get like a tag team title match, but they're also playing this whole aspect of, okay, New Day wants that record from Demolition, and it looks like they're playing off this aspect that they have to earn it throughout the entire time by having to defend their titles almost on a weekly basis now to get to that record to go along with it. The match was it was okay. There was some decent back and forth in there, but it was pretty much what you expected with Gallows and Anderson going over in the end. So they face off against New Day next week in that particular match. You had a backstage segment with Sami Zayn, Stephanie McMahon, and Mick Foley. And this was an interesting one because they played it off like earlier in the show, or not even earlier in the show, but earlier in the segment. It was like you weren't being serious about like firing all those guys for losing that 5-on-5 match. They're like, no, but they also said but ramifications didn't need to be taken, and they were taking out on Sami Zayn, where Mick Foley was forced to basically put him in a match with Braun Strowman later in that night, and of course you get this whole aspect of. And this is like his punishment for not bringing over the Intercontinental title and everything to go along with it. Even though it was kind of out of his hands and he was cheated out of the match and everything, he was still being punished for it to go along with it. And it was an interesting way of going. So later on in the night, when Strowman and Zayn face, like Strowman just destroys Sami Zayn throughout the match. And now it feels like they're going to another route of a storyline with Sami Zayn and Mick Foley, because Foley was the one that comes out like late in the match saying he can't defend himself. Match is over. Stop the match. Everything in that sense. It wasn't even like a ref stoppage. It was just him doing it. But it's going to be an interesting way of seeing where this story is going to go down the road, and I'll be interested to see where they go with everything to go along with this. But we'll see how they play off of that aspect. And is it going to be one of those bits like where Sami Zayn has to come overcome things in the end to like through punishment through Stephanie McMahon, even if it comes by Mick Foley in that sense? Like, and is it going to be like Foley taking sympathy towards Zayn? We'll see where they go with this. But it could definitely be interesting in the end. So you had also had Jericho's highlight reel. And like you say, he was about to do the autopsy, as he liked to call it, for the 5-on-5 men's variation tag match at Survivor Series. He immediately gets interrupted by KO, and then they start having this back and forth between each other, starting to making it look like they are blaming each other, like KO blaming Jericho's thing based off of the list. Like, even building the tension is like making it feel like that they were going to split up tonight. But then in the end, they do this great spot. It's like, you know who's to blame? You know who's to blame? And then both say, Roman Reigns! Roman Reigns is always to blame, apparently, for everything in this case. And it was a good way of teasing that they were going to break off the friendship tonight and start their feud, but it's not going to go in that route. And it was a great way of going with everything. Eventually, Rollins comes out because they were starting to talk about him. So Seth Rollins is the first one to come out. He's starting he comes out there and finally kind of announces like what he was getting for joining Team Raw. It was a future opportunity at the title, and he says he wants it tonight and everything. And that they start brawling. Roman Reigns comes out to make the save, and eventually Foley comes out and makes the match with Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins. One with Jericho and Reigns banned from ringside, but also it being a no DQ match. Doesn't that defeat the purpose? Making it no DQ and then you're banning people from ringside? It kind of defeats the purpose. Just saying. And I'll talk about that one a little bit later. Because up next to talk about was the Charlotte promo. Charlotte comes out, starts cutting a promo about what happened at Survivor Series and everything in that sense. You know, just basking in whatever, trying to take all the glory and everything in that sense. She gets interrupted by Sasha Banks, saying that she wants a rematch and everything like that. And of course, Charlotte is like, "Yeah, we'll do it next week." In that case. And it was one of those interesting aspects of, okay, they again announced Sasha and Charlotte for Raw. And each time Sasha faces Charlotte on Raw, Sasha wins. And then she loses at the pay-per-view. It'll be interesting to see how they play that off. I feel like they're going to be ending that feud next week with Sasha and Charlotte, because they've really been teasing the Bayley Charlotte side of things, and they're even beginning to tease a Nia and Sasha Banks storyline here, because Nia comes out, they start kind of having their back and forth, and eventually Nia starts taking out Sasha, and then Bayley comes out to make the save. It turns into a tag match where Sasha goes over Charlotte by making her tap out to the bank statement, so it gives it a little potential tease for a title change. The match was fine to go along with it, but nothing too spectacular with that. So it, like I said, it leads you to believe it's like, okay, maybe Sasha wins one more time on Raw, where she seems to win the title, versus on pay-per-view where she seems to lose the title back to Charlotte or something in that sense. But so there's that little bit of a tease in there. It's like, okay, she wins on Raw, but all that stuff. So we'll see how that plays off. But I would assume that they're going to have something where they kind of get away from Sasha and Charlotte for a little bit, where Charlotte's going to go with Bayley, and then Sasha's going to go with Nia. And we'll see where they go with everything after that. This leads us to the main event of the night, which was Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins, that no DQ match for the Universal title, with Roman Reigns and Jericho banned from ringside. Still mind blown. Like, it kind of defeats the purpose in having a no DQ. These two put on a damn good match. Like, this was a fun match to watch between both sides. It was great to see them go through, like, the crowd and everything in that sense. In a couple really good spots, like, Rollins getting up on the top of, like, the where teams would normally enter into the arena, and dives off of it onto Kevin Owens. Just a lot of really good action from both sides here inside of this match. And then, as it looks like Seth Rollins is going to, get Kevin Owens back in the ring area to potentially win the match, he gets attacked by a fan in a Sin Cara mask. If you guys have been listening to, have been watching over news sites, you'll know where this one's going. But lo and behold, who's in the Sin Cara mask but Chris Jericho? He eats a pedigree, but this causes the distraction long enough for Kevin Owens to do a powerbomb to Seth Rollins on the apron to pick up the victory in the match. And again, the irony is, Jericho comes out in a Sin Cara mask after they had the backstage fight. So that's kind of the irony to go along with it. But otherwise, great match, and they play up the whole aspect of controversy that Jericho was banned from ringside. He got into ringside and everything in that sense, even though it was a no DQ match. So what was really stopping him to begin with? Who knows? To go along with it. Otherwise, great match from both sides, and we'll see where they go with everything again off of this. Is it going to be one of those bits where is Jericho going to be with Roman, or is Jericho going to go up against Rollins, or is Rollins going to stay with Kevin Owens, or does Owens have to face Roman or something in that sense? Because that's where you feel like it's kind of going right now. You're expecting a feud at some point in time between Jericho and Owens, but it's not going to happen quite yet, because they're doing stuff between either Owens and Rollins, or Owens and Reigns, or Reigns is going to be with Jericho, or Jericho's going to be with Rollins. We'll see where they go storyline wise with this down the road here. This week's Raw, I mean, overall, what can you say? It was actually kind of an entertaining show. I thought it came off rather well this week, and Raw was, like I said with the main event, like the way it was, it just came off. That main event was great. and it kind of made the whole show. But you had other snippets in there that I would consider really good to go along with it. Like the New Day and Sheamus and Cesaro was a really good match, and now you're left teasing this whole aspect: is New Day really face or heel or anything in that sense to go along with it? They're building new stories to go along with that aspect of it as well. You're kind of beginning the whole Bayley, Charlotte, but you're also getting Sasha and Nia Jax to go along with it on the women's side. Cruiserweight side, they're promoting 205 Live at least to go along with it, but you're not really getting much storyline-wise there. And potential for something with Big Cass and Rusev down the road as well. So we'll see how everything plays off with that, and maybe this... And what will be also interesting is to see where they go with this Sami Zayn Mick Foley thing as well down the road here. So that is my review this week for Monday Night Raw. I thank you guys for watching, and I hope you have a great day.